Good morning, team. I'm Faris, as your team leader, and today we will be able to discussing something fundamental to our growth here, which is learning theories. These are not just abstract concepts, but tools we can use to sharpen of how we perform tasks, solve problems, and adapt to new challenge. At work, learning isn't just about attending a formal studying session or just attend a meeting. It's something we do every day, whether we realize or not, through hands-on experience, observing colleagues, and even learning from ourselves. Understanding how we can learn can make all the difference in how we approach our job. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Miss Azura, our expert trainer, is going to walk us through these learning theories and how they apply to our roles.
Thank you, Safaris. Hi, everyone. I'm Azura, your trainer, and I'm really excited to dive into today's session. Learning, as Safaris mentioned, is a process that is ongoing. Whether we're aware of it or not, we're always taking in new information, refining skills, and even reshaping our behavior. Now, when it comes to how we learn, there are three major types of learning that psychologists often talk about. Let me break them down for you. First, there is cognitive learning. This is the kind of learning where we actively use our brains to process information. When you're solving a problem, reading up on a new concept, or analyzing data, think of it as using your mental tools to make sense of something new. Next, we have associative learning. This happens when you connect one thing with another through experience. A common example is learning through rewards or punishment. Say you perform a task well and get positive feedback. That feedback reinforces the behavior, so you're more likely to do it again. Lastly, there is observational learning. Have you ever learned something just by watching someone else? Whether you're observing how a senior colleague handles a client or watching a tutorial online, this type of learning occurs when we model our behavior after the others. All right, now that we have outlined this type of learning, let's look at how our brains plays a crucial role in making it all happen. So, cognitive learning involves building neural connection. When you're learning new information like new tools or process, neurons in your brains form a pathway. The more you engage with that information, whether by practicing or reviewing, the stronger this pathway becomes. It's a bit like creating a trail in the forest. The more you walk it, the clearer it gets. Associative learning, on the other hand, is about making connections between action and outcomes. Say you touch a hot surface, your brain quickly links the sensation of the heat with pain, teaching you not to touch it again. In the workplace, this might mean learning from feedback. If you get rewarded from completing a task efficiently, your brain associate that behavior with a positive outcome. Observational learning engage what are known as mirror neurons. These are special cells in the brain that activate both when you perform an action and when you see someone else doing it. It's like brain rehearsing a skill before you even try it yourself. This is why shadowing someone's experience can be so helpful. It primes your brain to mirror the actions.
That makes sense, Miss Azura. But I'm curious, how do I actually
Mhm.
use these theories when I'm learning new tools? Should I focus on one type of learning more than the others?
Um,
Yeah, yeah, I was wondering too, but more about how this applies to clients. Handling customers can be quite unpredictable sometimes. How can I use these learning methods to be more effective with them?
Hmm. Great question, both of you. Let me break it down with some concrete examples. Firstly, for cognitive learning, as for you, Ishki, when you're learning a new software tools, the first step might be reading a manual or watching tutorials. That's a classic cognitive learning. Your brain is processing the information and organizing it, helping you understand how the software works. You can reinforce this by practicing the tool regularly to strengthen those neural connections. Secondly, for associative learning, as for you, Izati, when it comes to client interactions, associative learning can be incredibly useful. Let's say you handle a difficult customer complaint and your manager praises you for how you resolve it. That positive feedback strengthens your brain connection between the action you took and the result. You're more likely to use the approach next time because your brain associate it with a success. So for observational learning, both of you can benefit from this one actually. Ishki, you could watch a colleague who's skilled with the software, observe how they use it efficiently, and then try to mimic their approach. And Izati, in your case, you might learn from shadowing someone who is great with customers, seeing how they de-escalate tension or handle tricky situations. Observing can sometimes teach you more than trials and error.
Thank you, Miss Azura. So those are some great example. It's clear that learning is a one size fits all process. It's a continuous, and we can adapt this method to whatever we're dealing with. So let's think this about this practically. How Izati and Ishki think that you guys can apply this learning method to your work moving forward?
For me, cognitive learning will be key, especially with the CRM system we will be using. I will start by reading through the documentation and watching some tutorials. Then, once I have got the basics down, I will practice using the system until it becomes second nature.
Yeah, for me, associative learning really stands out when I get good feedback on handling a customer. It sticks with me, and I try to repeat what works. It keeps me motivated and refine my approach every time.
Mm, exactly. Both of you are right on point. Just remember we're constantly learning, whether we're aware of it or not, by being mindful of how you learn, whether it's cognitive, associative, or observational, you can take more control of your development. The key is to remain flexible and open to learning in different ways. Growth doesn't stop, and neither should our approach to learning.
All right, that's exactly right. Thank you, Miss Azura. This has been really eye-opening, and I hope we all take this lesson to heart. Applying these learning theories will help us adapt and excel as we face a new challenge and responsibilities. Ishki, Izati, let's stay committed to learning, no matter how experienced we become. All right. So, any final thought or question?
Thank you, Miss Azura and Sir Faris.
All right.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you for Ishki and Izati. All right. So it's great. Let's keep this approach in mind as we move forward. And special thanks to Miss Azura for leading this session. And thank you again for Ishki and Izati for attending this session. So I hope we can work together as a team. So
Mm.
let's meet another time. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm your trainer for today. In today's session, we'll be talking about how to shape behaviors in the workplace using two important methods, which is reinforcement and punishment. These are the tools that can be applied not only in management but also in everyday work tasks to influence how people act. So, what does shaping behavior really means? It's about guiding someone towards desired behavior by reinforcing positive action and discouraging unwanted ones. But we'll go into more details on that soon. Are you both ready?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm ready. I have heard of positive reinforcement, but I'm not sure how it works in an office setting.
Great starting point, Ishki. Positive reinforcement is when you reward a behavior you want to see more of. It could be something as simple as verbal praise or a more formal reward like a bonus or recognition. The idea is that the reward encourages the employee to repeat the behavior. Let's role play so you can see how it works in action. Ishki, imagine you're a manager and I am one of your employee. I've just completed a project ahead of the schedule and you want to encourage me to keep up the good work. How would you go about reinforcing that behavior?
Okay, I had probably say something like, "Hey Azura, great job on finishing the project earlier than expected. The quality of the work is impressive too. Keep up the good work." Maybe I had even sent an email to the team recognizing your efforts.
Hmm. That is an excellent example of positive reinforcement. By recognizing the good work, you're making me feel appreciated, which motivates me to continue working. And recognition can be incredibly powerful in reinforcing desired behavior.
So what happens if someone is not doing well? Do we just ignore it, or is there a way to address it without being too harsh?
Good question, Izati. That is where punishment, or as I prefer, corrective feedback, comes into play. Punishment isn't about being harsh, it's about setting clear expectation and offering constructive feedback so the person knows how to improve. Let's role play again. Izati, let's say I am an employee who constantly late to meetings and you are my manager who how will you handle that using corrective feedback?
I probably say something like, Azura, I've noticed you've been late to several meetings this week. It's important that everyone's on time so we can start productively. Is there something preventing you from joining on time?
That is well done, Izati. You're addressing the issue directly, but you're also showing concern and offering support by asking if there is something affecting my punctuality. You're opening a dialogue which help create a solution rather than just reprimanding me. Mm.
So it's not just about pointing out mistakes, right? It's about giving people a way to improve.
Exactly, she. The goal isn't to make people feel bad. It's to help them understand what went wrong and how to correct it. When used properly, both reinforcement and punishment can shape behavior effectively. Now, let's dive into how you can apply these methods in your daily tasks. Can either of you think of situation where you could use positive reinforcement?
Sure, in our team, we submit weekly reports, and one of my colleagues always submits theirs early and includes extra details. I could definitely praise them for that, and maybe even share their reports as an example for the rest of the team.
That is a fascinating example, Izati. Recognizing their effort not only motivates them to continue doing great work, but it also sets a positive example for others. Sharing their work promotes a culture of excellence across the team.
That makes sense. What about corrective feedback? What if someone on my team is repeatedly making the same mistake, like entering incorrect data? How should I handle that?
In that case, it's important to address the issue directly but constructively. You know what I mean? So you could say something like, I have noticed there have been a few errors in the data entries recently, and it's important that we ensure accuracy for our reports. Let's go over the process together to see if there are ways to help avoid this error in the future. So by asking that, you're not just pointing out the problem, you're offering to work together to find a solution.
I like that approach. It feels like a punishment and more like a supportive conversation to fix the issue.
Yeah, exactly, Zati. The focus should always be on improvement, whether through positive reinforcement or corrective feedback. The goal is to guide behavior in a way that benefit both the employee and the company. Now that we have covered both methods, do you see how you could use this in your everyday work tasks?
Yeah, I think I could use positive reinforcement more often. I have noticed that when people are recognized for their work, they seem more motivated. I will make it a point to include praise in my regular feedback.
And for me, I think I will be more mindful of using corrective feedback constructively. It's easy to point out mistakes, but I will try to have conversations where I'm also offering support to help them improve.
Okay, that is great to hear from both of you. Remember, the key is to find right balance, encouraging good behavior and addressing issue in a way that constructive. If you apply this technique regularly, I'm sure you'll see positive changes in your teams. Encouraging good behavior and addressing issue in a way that constructive. If you apply this technique regularly, I'm sure you'll see positive changes in your teams.
Thanks, Miss Azura.
Thanks, Miss
You're
Azura.
welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad this was helpful. Keep practicing these methods and don't hesitate to adapt them based on the situation. Shaping behavior is an ongoing process, but it is incredibly rewarding when done right. Okay, that is all for today's session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you, Miss.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum everyone. Good evening. So tonight I want to talk about something that influence our day-to-day interaction in ways we may not always realize how we perceive other and form judgment. So our perception can be shaped by many factors such as our past experience, cultural background, or even a specific context that we're in. So this perception affect how we treat others, and often the judgment we make might not be accurate.
I've definitely experienced that before. There have been times when I judged someone based on a first impression, like thinking a colleague wasn't committed because they didn't contribute because they didn't contribute much during meetings. Later, I realized that was just more of listener than a talker.
Exactly as well. That's a perfect example of how perception can shape our judgment. Usually, our brain relies on a mental shortcut to make quick judgment about people. But this shortcut can be misleading and have a big impact on a working based behavior. So, let's talk about a few common shortcuts and how they can affect of how we treat others. Um, First and foremost, one of the most common shortcut is stereotyping. Stereotyping is where we make assumption about someone based on the group they belong to, or such their gender, age, even their job title. So this can cause us to expect a certain behavior from a someone just because they fit a particular category, which might not reflect who they really are. So this can be effect on us how we make assumption to others. So move to the next common shortcut is the halo effect. Halo effect uh, usually happen when we see one positive trait in someone, like being a punctual. So of course we will make their excel in all areas, like their technical skill or leadership skill. So that's not always the case, and the halo effect can lead us to the overestimate someone performance in area that they are not fit into. Yeah.
That's really something I've done without realizing it. For example, I once assumed a senior colleague was bad with energy because of their age. But then they
Hmm.
case a software issue I have been struggling with for days. I felt embarrassed afterwards for jumping to that conclusion.
Alright, Hazi. That's a great example of stereotyping. In a particular, can leave in all opportunities for people and lead to the misunderstanding in the workplace. It can also, like we say, negatively affect team dynamics because people might feel unfairly judged or misjudged based on those stereotypes. Similarly, the halo effect can lead us to overlook areas where someone might need improvement, but we already form a positive judgment on the one trait. For example, I give, if we think someone is great just because of they always deliver work on time, we might ignore the other areas that are not um like they are need a support too, like a communication skill because we must see of not everybody is a perfect on their job. Basically, they
Mm.
have a positive and a negative. So, yeah.
Oh, I can see how that plays out. Sometimes I think someone is doing well just because they have a positive attitude. But when I think about it more, they might still need help in other areas like collaboration or meeting deadlines.
Exactly. This shortcut can create a blind spot in our judgment because sometimes it will lead to the unfair assessment, and over time, it will impact our team morale. Yes, and stereotyping also can make employees feel pigeonholed, while the halo effect can create unrealistic expectation for others to live up to. So it will make the workers feel more stressed and burned out. Both shortcut can prevent us from seeing the full picture of someone's abilities or challenge. That's the disadvantage of this shortcut.
So, how do we avoid falling into these traps? It sounds like these mental shortcuts happen almost automatically.
All right, that's a great question and a great situation that you want to ask. So the first step is avoid this perceptual shortcut is becoming aware of them, right? You must remember, once you acknowledge that we all have a bias and rely on this shortcut, so you can start slowly doing your thought process. Like, don't make a quick judgment on them. If they are good at something, not they are good at everything. So there's the first one. Instead of quickly jumping to the conclusion about someone based on one trait, you can ask yourself, what am I basing on this judgment? Or because it's only one road, not all road that we can look at one time. So you can challenge yourself to make assumption by seeking more information. For instance, talk to the person, observe them in the setting, or ask for feedback from other workers that who work with who work with them.
Oh, so the idea is to challenge our assumption and gather more information for making a judgment, right?
Yes, that's right, Zura. And then beyond that, it is important to evaluate people holistically. Not use your feeling to evaluate people, but use your particular all over your body to make a evaluation. When assessing someone performance, breaking it down into specific areas rather than letting one a positive or negative trait color your overall judgment. For example, instead of thinking, and they're always on time, so they must be good at everything. Like I said before, look at how they perform in the different areas, like a teamwork, communication, or technical skill. This will help prevent the halo effect from influencing your perception. It is about being more intentional and thoughtful in how we form judgment about others.
Alright, but what if I find myself still relying on those shortcuts? Is there anything specific I can do to avoid these judgment errors or to make sure I'm not letting stereotypes or the halo effects affect how I treat others?
Hmm. Alright, that's a great point, Hazi. So yeah, sometimes it can be hard to catch ourselves, but there are a few things you can do. One is to slow down when making judgment about others. Give yourself time to reflect on whether your judgment is based on fact or just assumption. So it will help you to not make a quick judgment to others. So another another thing you can do is seek out diverse perspective. When you work with people from a different background, you are more likely to challenge the stereotype you might hold. So you can get a lot of information from others. And you can also ask from feedback from your peers or supervisor. Sometimes they might notice something you have missed, and your perspective can help you reassess your judgment.
Mm, it's definitely something to keep in mind. I try to be more mindful of how I'm perceiving others and how it impacts my interaction with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest takeaway for me is realizing that perception isn't always reality. And like you said, slowing down and gathering more information can really help avoid those snap judgments.
Yes, that's the true, Aziz. So perception can be a powerful tool when used mindfully, but it can also lead to the misunderstanding if we rely too heavily on the shortcut. The key is be open to changing our perception as we gather more information. I'm glad to hear both of you are committed to applying this in your day-to-day interaction. Congratulations. So it will definitely help to foster a more inclusive and understanding workplace. So let's keep working on this, and I will be more happy to work with you guys. And remember, perception is not always reality. So it's crucial sometimes. And it is important to remain curious and open-minded. So thank you for the great discussion today.
Thanks, Faris. This was really helpful. I'll make sure to think more about how I'm perceiving others moving forwards.
Same here, I will work on avoiding those shortcuts in the future.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that both of you. So let's keep this conversation going on so we can continue working together. All right, guys? Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. You have been assigned a new project. And before we dive into execution, we need to discuss how we are going to approach decision making for this. Alright, so it's crucial to pick the right method for decision ahead. Faris, why don't you get us started by walking through the rational decision making process?
Absolutely, Miss Hazi. So the rational decision-making model is a structured and logical approach. Here are the steps. So the first one, we define or identify the problem. So in this case, it might be something like how to allocate our resource effectively for the next project. And next, we identify decision criteria, which are the factors that will influence our decision. And for this project, we will consider things like the budget, deadlines, and available manpower. And after that, we allocate weight to the criteria. For example, if we are pressed for time, the timeline might take priority over cost. And then we develop the alternative. How we develop the alternative? We develop alternative against the criteria we set. So when we develop our criteria, we will not have a mixed criteria that we want that will disrupt our project. So and then we select the best alternative, the one that the best meet our criteria. Once they're done, we implement the chosen alternative, which basically putting the decision into action. And finally, we evaluate the decision. We evaluate decision effectiveness, which is after achieve the desired outcome, or do we need to make an adjustment? Uh, which is after implementation. So, did the decision achieve the desired outcome, or do we need to make adjustment? So that's the final steps. How we want to make.
Alright, thanks Faris. It sounds like a very structured way of pushing decisions, but what happens when we don't have all the information or the time to evaluate everything truthfully? Zeti, can you weigh in on that?
Sure, that's where bounded rationality comes into play. Unlike the ideal rational decision-making model, bounded rationality acknowledges that we are often limited by factors like incomplete information, time constraints, and even our own cognitive limitations. We might not have the time or ability to explore every possible option or evaluate every alternative in detail. So instead, we use satisficing, which means we select an option that's good enough and meeting the minimum criteria rather than being the absolute best solution. For instance, in our project, if we are pressed for time, we may choose a resource allocation method that isn't perfect but gets the job done within the deadline.
So, hey, Zati, essentially we're doing the best we can with the information and time we have available. But doesn't that limit us from finding the most optimal solution?
Exactly. It's a trade-off. You may not always get the optimal solution, but you save time and mental energy. It's realistic approach when the situation doesn't allow for a true rational process.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about intuitive decision making. It's something I have seen a lot in practice, especially under pressure. Intuitive decisions are based more on experience and gut feelings rather than step by step logic. It's the idea that through experience, we develop the ability to make quick decisions without over analyzing. For example, if we have done similar projects in the past, I might instinctively know that we need more manpower in the initial stage without having to do a full blown analysis. It's fast and often effective, especially when you are in a crunch or the situation is familiar.
That's a great point, Nishki. Initiative decision making can be incredibly valuable in situations where we need to act quickly or where we have got a lot of experience to draw from. But it can also be risky if we are dealing with unfamiliar challenges or if we rely too much on gut feelings without considering the data.
Yes, so it seems like the both approach have a their style, right? So the rational process is systematic and truth, but it is time consuming. Intuition is a fast and efficient, but there's a more room for error if you don't have a lot of experience or if you're new in a new situation.
Exactly. I think it depends on the context. For example, with this new project, since we are planning from scratch and need to allocate resources carefully, we should learn more toward the rational decision making model. We have the time to weigh on our options and the stakes are high. So being true makes sense.
That's true, but I think there will also be moments where we have to rely on intuition, especially when we hit roadblocks or when things don't go according to plan. Sometimes you can stop to evaluate every little decision.
I completely agree. I think for the big decision like resources allocation and timeline planning, we should follow the rationalization model. But as the project progresses and we encounter uh, unforeseen issues, like we can definitely rely on more on intuition to keep things moving. So let's open the floor for discussion. So what do you all think? Is it will be rational or initiative for this project?
So let me begin with my perspective. And from my perspective of view, I think rational decision making is the way to go for the big milestone. We've got time to evaluate our option, and we need to ensure that we are using our resource wisely. That's the point.
I agree with Faris. For major decisions like budgeting and resource allocation, it's safer to be systematic. However, I also think we need to remain flexible and use bounded rationality when necessary, especially when we are short of time or lacking information.
And from my side, I'd say intuitive decision making will be useful for the day-to-day operations or any sudden challenge we face. In those situations, relying on experience and quick thinking will keep things moving without bogging us down.
Okay, so looks like we are all in agreement then. So we will start with a rational approach for the big picture decision. But we will stay flexible using intuition when speed is more important than that position. Let's make sure we are not rigidly sticking to one model but adapting as we go. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yes,
Ex-
absolutely, Miss.
Yes, great. So let's move forward with the plan and we will keep each other updated if any decision needs to be revisited. Thanks for the input everyone.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you.